Hello everyone, if you're new, you should really click subscribe because I'll be making a ton of cool videos like this in the future. And if you're not new to my channel, welcome back. Glad you came back again. And today I'm going to be making some like patchwork bandana pants inspired by A$AP Rocky. I've been seeing some girls make these, but I don't really see any good tutorials for them anywhere online. And it's kind of, I'm just gonna use the same process that I use for my patchwork sweatpants, and I get a ton of questions on those. So this will just be like simple patchwork pants. They're gonna be a really simple pants pattern. I'm just gonna use some pants I already have, and I probably won't put pockets in these. I mean, if you wanna put pockets in them, you can. It just takes a lot of extra time, and I really don't feel like doing that today. But if you wanna do that, just look up a quick like inserting pocket pattern. It's really not that hard. So I got these bandanas all from my local flea market. They were super cheap. Honestly, the material is not great, so they're gonna be a little see-through. But once again, this is a super simple tutorial. I'm not gonna line these just because whatever, it's summer, I live in Florida. I don't really care if the pants are see-through. They'll be nice and light and comfy. So that's what we're gonna be doing today. So I picked up 10 bandanas from that place. I honestly have no idea how many I'm gonna need, but they're like this big. Also, make sure you wash and dry them beforehand, because like you can see how like thin the material is. Like they shrink up so much. They literally like shrunk in half when I put them in the wash and dryer. So definitely make sure you do that, otherwise they're gonna be like 10 times too small by the time you finish the pants, and we don't want that. And I'm gonna be making these ones with like a wide bottom, but if you want them to look like joggers, you can just add elastic in them, just like we're gonna do the waistband. So it'll be super easy, don't stress out about that. And I'm just using like these pants I got at Goodwill. They're just straight pants, but you can also use sweatpants for just like a basic pattern. I'm gonna like make them a little wider than this, but you just take a pair of pants that fit you pretty decently, because we're just gonna use them for like the waistband, and I'm gonna make mine nice and baggy, so it really won't matter what the pattern is. But so besides the bandanas and the pants, you're gonna also need some elastic or like a shoelace, some sort of string for the waistband to keep your pants up. And then you're also gonna need a sewing machine for sure. And if you have a serger, I would probably use one. I don't think it's necessary on your sewing machine. You could use more of like an interlocking stitch if you're worried about fraying. And I am worried about fraying because some of my bandanas are doing this, even though I haven't cut them up yet. So I'm probably gonna serge all of my seams, but you don't have to. It'll be super simple. Just use your judgment and let's get started. So I think it'll be simpler for this tutorial if I actually make a pattern. So I'm just using freezer paper for this. You can get it at your local grocery store. So I just fold my pants up like this. And if you want to make like a really contoured pattern, you would actually follow like the front crotch versus the back crotch. This is gonna be a super simple pattern, so I'm only gonna make one of these panels, so the front and the back are gonna be the same. I don't have a butt, so this works fine for me. If you do have, you know, a bigger behind or want them to look a little more feminine, just make a pattern of the front and then a different pattern for the back, because on pants the back is supposed to be bigger. But these are gonna be like really baggy on me, so I'm just gonna show you the simplest way. So I'm just gonna trace around the pants to make the pattern, and make sure you leave enough room at the bottom to fold it up and hem it. And then at the top, make sure you leave like this much at least to fold it over and create a waistband at the end. And I'm also including my seam allowances in this pattern, just because it's easier for me to not forget to add a seam allowance when I'm cutting the fabric. So here I outlined my pattern. You can see I just made the bottom a little longer and a little wider and a little wider down the leg. And then when you get up here, you want to make sure you leave not only enough for the waistband, you also want to make sure you stretch this all the way it can, otherwise you won't be able to fit in the pants once you make them. So it should have like more of a squared off shape like this, as you can see in my pattern. So here's what the pattern looks like after I cut it out. It's nothing special, but it'll get the job done. So I laid the bandanas over the pattern just so I can have an idea of the size I need to cut them at. And this is like the pattern I want the first pant leg to look like. And I really don't like my patchwork stuff to be symmetrical, but if you do, you could just go ahead and like sew the bandanas in half, but I'm gonna do them all a little different. So now I cut the actual pieces out and I'm just going to serge them all together on each seam. So now that I have them all sewn together, I'm just going to lay the pattern back on top and then I'm going to cut around it and I'll have my first panel. So here's what my first panel looks like, and the next panel I'm going to make the exact same way with the crotch over here. I'm just going to follow the pattern the same exact way I had it, but change up the bandana designs. And then for the last 2 panels, you're going to want to flip the pattern over so you make 2 panels with the crotch on this side. So now all my panels are done, and I used all 10 bandanas, like that was all the scraps I had. So I would actually recommend getting more because I almost ran out. And now I'm just going to match up the fronts and the backs for the legs. So now I matched up the pieces for the left leg and the right leg, and I put them inside out, as you can see. And now I'm going to start by sewing on the outside of both of the legs and the insides of both of the legs. And don't sew the crotch at all because we'll do that to put them together at the end. So my serger was giving me issues, and I said I'm just going to finish this on my normal sewing machine instead of having to deal with that. And a stitch like this is an awesome stitch to use to prevent fraying if you're just doing this on a normal sewing machine. So once you're done with the legs, you're going to want to turn one right side out. That's that one. You can see the seams are still showing on this one. And you're going to want to put the right side out one inside the crotch of the inside out one. So just in case that was confusing, so I already put the leg inside of this leg, and you can see this is the one that is right side out inside of the one that's inside out. And I'm just taking the crotch right here and I'm going to pin these so the 2 crotches will be sewn together, and you're just going to sew this in one straight line all the way around. So now just flip them right side out, and you should have like the basic pant shape, and there's no waistband in them, so they're definitely not going to stay up. But if you want to try them on to make sure you didn't make them too tight, this would be an awesome time to do that, because if you did make them too tight, what you can do is just rip open the side seams and add some more panels of handkerchiefs. So I tried them on to make sure they fit me, and they do, and the edges were a little uneven after I sewed them together, so I just trimmed the bottoms, and now I'm gonna trim the top of the waistband, and I'm gonna make it like a tiny bit lower, probably like 3/4 of an inch lower in the front than it is in the back, just to give it like a more professional look, I guess. So generally I would use a serger to go over the raw hem, but right now my serger isn't working, so I'm just going to use the same overlocking stitch, and I'm just going to go over the edge so the edge doesn't fray before I make my waistband. So I finished it, and obviously the edge doesn't look as good as it would have if I would have been able to use my serger, but it's okay. It'll make sure that it doesn't fray through the seams, so that's all that matters. Now I am just going to fold over the top of the waistband. Mine's like 2 inches, and I'm going to pin it all the way around, and then I'm just going to sew it with a straight seam because this doesn't need to be stretched fabric. So I finished sewing the waistband, and what you could do is before you end the waistband seam, you can just like leave an inch opening and thread the elastic through. But I forgot to do that, and I want to be able to tell like the back and the front apart anyways, so I just cut a little slit in the inside part of the waistband, and now I'm going to take the elastic I have, and you can use a safety pin or like tape this to a stick to thread it through. But I have this thing called a bodkin, and it's really helpful, and you just like go like this, and now I'm just gonna thread it through the waistband. So now I got the elastic through all the way, and I forgot to mention, if you're using a drawstring, it's the same exact process, but you're just gonna make 2 little holes in the front to pull the drawstring out of, but you're just gonna thread it through the same way. And also, if you're using elastic, make sure to measure it to how big you need it for your waist, before you thread it through. So mine is already done, and now I just pinned it. Also, you want to check to make sure it's not twisted, because sometimes elastic gets twisted when you pull it through. Mine, I already fixed it. It was a little twisted, but now it's not. And now I pinned it together, and I'm just going to sew it down and make sure it's super reinforced. So now that I sewed it, I'm just gonna pull it through so you can't see that elastic anymore. And once it's through, I'm just going to hand sew that little hole closed. So now it looks like this, and I'm just gonna hand sew that closed real quick. So now this is totally optional, but I don't like the look of the waistband just like this, so I'm going to just put like a row of stitches down the middle, and I'm just going to pin it first to make sure it doesn't gather too much in some spots. So I'm going to stretch it out evenly and then just sew a straight line down it, but this is completely optional. You don't need to do it if you don't want to. So now the waistband is done. I'm not sure if you can see. It honestly makes a really big difference in person. Like, I just think they look less handmade if you put sometimes I do like 2 or 3 extra lines, and it just makes sure that the elastic doesn't flip over when you wash them too. So I really like sewing down the middle of them. So the last step is to fold over the bottoms of the legs and hem them. So I recommend trying them on first, just to make sure they're gonna be the right length you want. And so I did that, and I pinned where I want the length to be. And you can sew it in the exact same way we did the waistband, or I am going to use a cover stitch machine. So I'm just gonna do that real quick. And this is what they looked like once I was done. I actually really love them. So this is the same process that I used to make my patchwork sweatpants as well. The only real difference here is for those, I press open every seam and use my cover stitch serger over it to make all the seams look nice and professional. But you can use this tutorial to make patchwork sweatpants or bandana pants or whatever you want. And if this video helped you, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. I am still super new to YouTube, so this helps me a lot.